They thought no aid was coming. Then human warship arrived howling from the void part. The air in Kestra outpost tasted like dust and fear. It clung to the back of every throat, thick and dry, no matter how much water the colonists drank. Outside the reinforced dome, the sky burned red with the fires of a dying day, and with the distant flashes of plasma fire from orbit. The Vraken had come without warning 3 weeks ago, their black-hulled ships blotting out the stars like a swarm of angry hornets. Now they circled like vultures, waiting for the last breath of resistance to fade. Kestra was never meant to be a fortress. It was a mining and research station, tucked on the edge of a barren moon orbiting a quiet gas giant in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Scientists came to study rare minerals. Engineers came to test deep drill tech. Diplomats from neutral systems stopped by for rest and refuel. No one expected war, especially not from the Vraken hegemony, a ruthless alien empire known for glassing entire worlds that refused to bow. Now, only 47 souls remained inside the crumbling dome. Most were civilians. A few had once worn militia uniforms, but their gear was patched, their ammo nearly gone. Their leader, a retired freighter pilot named Jake Morrow, stood at the main viewport, his knuckles white on the railing. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His eyes were bloodshot, his beard rough with grime, but his stance was steady. He had promised the others he'd fight to the end, even if that end came in hours. Behind him, the command room buzzed with low voices and the hum of failing systems. Lights flickered. Air recyclers wheezed like old men. On a cracked console, Lena Hayes tapped at a dead comms panel, her fingers moving fast despite the tremor in her hands. She was 24, with sharp eyes and a stubborn streak that had kept her alive longer than most. She'd sent the last distress call 17 days ago. No reply, not from the Galactic Conquered, not from nearby colonies, not even from passing traders. Silence, total and absolute. "They're not coming," said a voice from the corner. It was Dr. Eli Vance, the outpost's lead geologist. His lab coat was torn, his glasses cracked. "We should surrender. Maybe they'll spare the non-combatants." Jake turned slowly. "You saw what they did to Rigel 9? They don't take prisoners. They take skulls." Lena didn't look up. "We don't know that for sure." "We do," Jake said flatly. "I flew supply runs near their border last year. Saw the wreckage, no bodies, just bones stripped clean and stacked like firewood." A heavy silence fell. Outside, another explosion rocked the dome. Dust rained from the ceiling. Someone whimpered. Lena finally stopped typing. She leaned back, rubbing her temples. "I rerouted power from the greenhouse to the shield generator. Bought us maybe 6 more hours. After that, the dome cracks. Atmosphere leaks. We suffocate or freeze, or get boarded," Jake added. No one argued. They all knew the Vraken dropships were waiting. Sleek, insect-like vessels that clung to hulls like parasites. Once they latched on, it was over. The Vraken didn't use stun weapons. They used blades and fire. Lena walked to the window beside Jake. Below, the landing pad was a mess of twisted metal and charred earth. Their last shuttle had been destroyed in the first strike. No way off. No way out. Just this dome, this rock, and the endless red sky. "You ever think about Earth?" she asked quietly. Jake grunted. "Sometimes. Mostly I think about my dog. Stupid mutt named Rusty. Left him with my sister in Denver." Lena smiled faintly. "I miss rain, real rain. Not the recycled mist from the showers." They stood like that for a long time, watching the enemy ships drift in lazy circles. The Vraken weren't rushing. They knew Kestra was finished. They were savoring it. Down in the med bay, Nurse Carla Briggs wrapped a bandage around a child's arm. The girl, no older than 8, had been caught in a shrapnel burst when the east airlock blew. She didn't cry, just stared at the ceiling with wide, empty eyes. Carla whispered a lullaby her grandmother used to sing, but her voice cracked halfway through. She didn't know if the girl would live to see tomorrow. None of them did. In the mess hall, a group of engineers shared the last of the protein bars. No one spoke. They just chewed slowly, as if stretching the moment could stretch their lives too. One of them, a quiet man named Owen, kept glancing at the ceiling as though expecting the roof to cave in any second. Back in the command room, the power flickered again. This time, the light stayed off for 3 full seconds before buzzing back on. Lena cursed under her breath and yanked open a floor panel, crawling inside to check the wiring. Sparks flew as she twisted 2 frayed cables together. The console beeped once weakly but stayed alive. Jake watched her work. He admired her grit. Most people would have given up days ago, but not Lena. She kept fixing, kept trying, kept hoping. "You really think someone's out there?" he asked. Lena paused, her hands still in the wires. "I don't know. But if I stop believing, what's left?" Before Jake could answer, the alarm blared, a short, sharp shriek that made everyone freeze. The main sensor screen flickered to life, showing a new contact entering orbit. Not Vraken, too fast, too clean. Lena scrambled out of the panel and lunged for the console. "What is that?" Jake joined her, squinting at the readout. The ship was massive, shaped like a spearhead with wings folded tight. No ID tag, no transponder signal, just a ghost in the void. "It's not on any registry I know," Lena said, her voice tight with confusion. The Vraken ships reacted instantly. They broke formation, weapons charging, engines flaring. Whatever this newcomer was, they saw it as a threat. For a heartbeat, hope flared in the room. Then it died just as fast. "It's probably another scavenger," Jake muttered. "Or a mercenary looking to loot what's left." Lena didn't answer. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The unknown ship didn't slow. It didn't hail. It just came. Silent, swift, and terrifyingly direct. Then, without warning, it vanished from sensors. "Slipstream jump?" Jake asked. "No," Lena whispered. "It's still there. I can feel it." Outside, the sky went dark. Not from clouds, not from night. Something had blotted out the stars. And then it came. A sound unlike anything they'd ever heard tore through the atmosphere. A deep, shuddering howl that vibrated in their bones, rattled their teeth, and made the dome groan like a living thing. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't natural. It was something in between. A war cry from the void itself. The Vraken ship scrambled, firing wildly into the dark. But it was too late. The human warship had arrived. They thought no aid was coming. Then human warship arrived, howling from the void part too far from the burning skies of Kestra. In a stretch of space so empty it had no name, the United Earth defense cruiser, Valkyrie, drifted like a shadow between stars. Its hull was scarred from past battles, its paint faded by cosmic rays, but its engines hummed with quiet power. Inside, the air smelled of ozone, coffee, and metal warmed by long duty. The crew moved with the calm rhythm of people who knew their ship like their own skin. Captain Daniel Ruiz stood on the command deck, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the star map glowing above the central console. He was in his late 40s, with short gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and hard choices. He hadn't shaved in 2 days. Not because he'd forgotten, but because he didn't care. All that mattered was the mission. Weeks ago, Earth intelligence had picked up strange signals near the outer rim, encrypted bursts, energy spikes, and the telltale warp trails of Vraken warships moving in secret. Most analysts dismissed it as routine patrols. But Ruiz remembered Rigel 9. He remembered the silence that followed its fall. He pushed for a recon run. Command said no. Too risky, too far. Not Earth's problem. So Ruiz went anyway. He filed a false log, rerouted supply manifests, and took the Valkyrie on what he called a deep-range calibration test. In truth, he was hunting ghosts. And now those ghosts had led him to Kestra. "Captain," said Marcus Boone from the tactical station. He was broad-shouldered, with a voice like gravel and eyes that missed nothing. "We've confirmed Vraken fleet activity around Kestra outpost. At least 3 cruisers, 6 destroyers, and a command carrier in high orbit. They've got the place locked down tight." Ruiz didn't flinch. "Any signs of survivors?" "Hard to tell. Comms are jammed, but thermal scans show life signs inside the main dome. Faint but steady." A pause. Then Ruiz said, "How long since their last distress call?" 17 days, sir. Sent on civilian band. No reply from Concord or nearby systems." Ruiz exhaled slowly. 17 days. That was long enough for hope to die. Long enough for good people to be forgotten. From the engineering station behind him, Priya Nair spoke up. She was small but sharp, her fingers dancing over holographic controls like a pianist. "Captain, if we jump in blind, we risk tearing the hull apart. The gravitic shield is still unstable after the last slipstream." "I know," Ruiz said, "but if we wait, there might be no one left to save." Priya didn't argue. She just nodded and started rerouting power to the shield emitters. She'd followed Ruiz through 3 campaigns. She trusted his gut more than any protocol. The Valkyrie wasn't built for show. It was a hunter-killer, sleek and silent, armed with railguns, plasma lances, and enough electronic warfare to blind a fleet. But its most unusual feature was the resonant hull plating, a prototype system that vibrated at specific frequencies during high-speed travel. In normal space, it was quiet, but during slipstream re-entry, it let out a low, mournful howl that scared even seasoned pilots. Some called it cursed. Others called it a warning. Ruiz just called it home. "Plot the jump," he ordered. Marcus tapped his console. "Coordinates locked. Exit point just beyond Kestra's magnetosphere. We'll come in hot." "Good," Ruiz said. "Let them hear us coming." The crew moved fast. Harnesses clicked into place. Weapons powered up. Lights dimmed to battle red. In the mess hall below, off-duty crew members strapped in, faces calm but eyes alert. They knew what was coming. They'd trained for it. But this wasn't a drill. This was real. Deep in the ship's core, the slipstream drive whined as it charged. Energy built in coils humming through the deck plates. The stars outside blurred into streaks. Then, with a shudder that ran from bow to stern, the Valkyrie vanished. For a few heartbeats, there was nothing. No light, no sound. Just the strange, stretched silence of folded space. Then they tore back into reality. The re-entry wasn't smooth. The hull screamed as it ripped through the boundary between dimensions. The resonant plating vibrated violently, sending that eerie howl rippling through the local space. A sound like 1,000 wolves crying in the dark. On Kestra's surface, animals cowered. Fracas sensors overloaded. Even the stars seemed to flinch. Inside the Valkyrie, alarms blared briefly before being silenced by Priya's quick hands. "Shield holding at 82%, she reported. "Minor stress fractures on port wing, but nothing critical." "Good work," Ruiz said. His eyes were already on the main display. The Vrakan fleet was turning, confused, disoriented by the sudden arrival. Their formation was breaking. "Tactical, lock onto the command carrier," Ruiz ordered. "Target weapons and comms arrays only. I want them blind and deaf before they know what hit them." "Aye, sir," Marcus replied, fingers flying. Railguns charging. Plasma lances primed. ECM active. The Valkyrie banked hard, its thrusters flaring blue against the black. It moved like a predator, fast, silent, deadly. The Vrakan ships fired wildly, their shots missing by miles. They weren't used to enemies that moved like this. Earth ships were supposed to be slow, clumsy, outdated. This one was none of those things. "Captain," Marcus said, "I'm picking up a weak signal from the surface. Encrypted, but it matches Earth civilian protocols." Ruiz's chest tightened. "Patch it through." A voice crackled over the comm, thin, tired, but alive. "This is Kestra Outpost. If anyone can hear this, we're still here." It was Lena Hayes. Ruiz didn't know her name yet, but he knew that voice. It was the voice of someone who hadn't given up, even when the universe told her to. "Tell them we're coming," Ruiz said quietly. Marcus opened a channel. "This is Captain Ruiz of the UED Valkyrie. Hold your positions. We've got you." On the surface, those words hit like rain after a drought. Back on the bridge, Ruiz didn't smile. There was no time. The Vrakan were regrouping. Their command carrier was turning, its main cannon glowing red-hot. "Brace for evasive," Ruiz ordered. "Then give them hell." The Valkyrie rolled left, dodging a plasma blast that would have vaporized a smaller ship. Then it fired. Railgun slugs, moving at a fraction of light speed, punched through the carrier's shield like paper. Explosions bloomed across its hull. Secondary systems failed. The ship listed, smoke pouring from its vents. But the fight wasn't over. 2 destroyers peeled off and charged the Valkyrie, weapons blazing. "Port thrusters full reverse," Ruiz snapped. "Starboard guns, target their engines." The ship obeyed instantly. It spun, fired, and darted away like a ghost. One destroyer lost its drive core and went dark. The other veered off, trailing fire. Inside the dome on Kestra, Jake Morrow stared up at the sky, his mouth open. He'd seen warships before, but nothing like this. Nothing so fast, so precise, so human. Lena gripped the console, tears in her eyes. "They came," she whispered. "They actually came," Ruiz didn't hear her. He was already planning the next move. The Vrakan wouldn't retreat easily, and if they had come to Kestra in force, it meant something valuable was here, something worth dying for or killing for. "Priya," he said, "scan the surface. Look for anything unusual, energy sources, buried structures, anything the Vrakan might want." "On it," she replied, her fingers already dancing across the screen. As the Valkyrie circled above, its howl fading into a low hum, the battle raged on. But for the first time in weeks, the people of Kestra dared to breathe. Hope had a sound. And it came howling from the void. They thought no aid was coming. Then human warship arrived, howling from the void part. The sky over Kestra outpost split open with fire and thunder. The Vraken dropships, sleek and black like beetles, had just begun their final descent when the Valkyrie screamed into the atmosphere. Its arrival wasn't gentle. It tore through the upper layers with a sound that made bones ache and teeth rattle. The howl wasn't just noise, it was a warning, a challenge, a promise all at once. And the Vraken heard it loud and clear. On the ground, Jake Morrow ducked as debris rained down from the dome ceiling. He looked up just in time to see one of the enemy dropships explode midair, shredded by a railgun round that moved faster than the eye could follow. Another veered wildly, its engine sputtering before crashing into the rocky plain outside the dome in a ball of orange flame. Inside the command room, Lena Hayes stood frozen, her hands still on the console. The voice from the warship, calm, firm, human, echoed in her ears. "We've got you." She hadn't realized how heavy the silence had been until it was broken. Outside, the battle raged. The Valkyrie moved like a storm given shape. It banked hard, firing short, precise bursts from its plasma lances. Each shot struck a Vraken ship with surgical accuracy. Engines, weapon mounts, bridge viewports. The enemy, used to overwhelming weaker foes with brute force, had no answer for this kind of speed, this kind of control. Their formations fell apart. Ships collided in panic. Orders turned to static. Captain Ruiz stood on his bridge, eyes locked on the main display. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice stayed steady. "Marcus, target the carrier's command node. Priya, keep the shield stable. We're taking heavy fire from the east flank." "Aye," Marcus grunted, his fingers flying over the weapons console. "Firing now." A beam of white-hot plasma lanced out from the Valkyrie's bow, striking the Vraken command carrier square in the bridge tower. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the howl of the ship seemed to pause. Then chaos returned. With their command ship crippled, the remaining Vraken vessels scattered. Some fled toward orbit. Others, driven by rage or protocol, turned their weapons on the Valkyrie. But the Earth cruiser was already moving, weaving through the fire like a dancer through rain. Down on the surface, the colonists watched in stunned silence. Carla Briggs pulled the wounded child closer, shielding her eyes from the flashes above. Owen the engineer stood at a cracked window, mouth open, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. Even Dr. Vance stopped pacing. He just stared as if seeing humanity for the first time. Jake finally moved. He grabbed his rifle and ran for the east airlock, the one the Vraken had been targeting. "If any of those bugs make it inside, we'll meet them at the breach," he shouted over his shoulder. Lena followed, not with a weapon, but with a data pad. "I can override the inner blast doors from the junction box near Bay 3. If we seal it fast enough, we trap them between bulkheads." Jake nodded. "Stay behind me." They ran through dim corridors, boots echoing on metal floors. Alarms still blared, but the tone had changed from doom to defense. Somewhere above, the Valkyrie roared again, its howl shaking loose panels from the walls. Outside, the last two dropships tried to land. One was hit mid-descent and spiraled into a canyon. The other made it, its clawed landing struts digging into the rock. The ramp lowered with a hiss of steam, and Vraken warriors poured out, tall, armored, their faces hidden behind black masks, weapons glowing with heat. But before they could reach the dome, a railgun round punched through the ground beneath them. The earth erupted. Fire swallowed the squad whole. Silence followed. Inside the dome, Jake and Lena reached the junction box. Lena's fingers flew over the keypad, bypassing fried circuits with practiced ease. "Got it," she said. "Bulkheads closing in 10 seconds. They heard the distant clang of heavy doors slamming shut deep within the outpost. The Vraken that had made it inside were now trapped in a dead-end corridor, cut off from the main dome. Jake raised his rifle. "Let's clean house." But before he could move, a new voice came over the outpost's internal comms. It was Ruiz. "All Kestra personnel, this is Captain Ruiz. Do not engage trapped hostiles. We're sending a boarding team to secure them. Stay in the command sector." Jake lowered his rifle slowly. He looked at Lena. They're sending people down? Lena nodded, eyes wide. They're not just saving us. They're fighting for us. Minutes later, 3 figures in matte black Earth defense armor dropped from the Valkyrie on grav chutes. They landed lightly near the dome's main hatch, weapons ready. One of them tapped the airlock control. The outer door hissed open, then the inner. No Vraken fire came. The enemy inside had already been neutralized by remote drones launched from the Valkyrie. The lead soldier removed his helmet. It was a woman with a shaved head and sharp eyes. "Sergeant Diaz," she said. "We're here to secure the perimeter and get you all to safety." Jake stepped forward, rifle slung over his shoulder. "I'm Jake Morrow. Civilian militia. We've got wounded." Diaz nodded. "Med team's right behind us." "Where's your comms officer?" Lena raised her hand. "That's me." "Good. Captain wants to speak with you. Says you sent the last distress call." Lena's heart jumped. She followed Diaz to a secure comms tent the soldiers had set up just outside the dome. Inside, a hologram flickered to life. Captain Ruiz standing on his bridge, his face tired but alert. "Ms. Hayes," he said. "You kept hope alive when no one else would." "Thank you," Lena swallowed. "We thought no one was coming." "We almost didn't," Ruiz admitted. "But we heard you, and we came." He paused, then added, "Now I need your help. My scans show something buried deep under this outpost. Something the Vraken were after. Do you know what it is?" Lena hesitated. "There's an old dig site below level 5. We found strange crystals there emitting low-level energy. We thought they were just geological oddities. Are they still intact?" "Yes, we sealed the chamber after the first tremors." Ruiz's expression grew serious. "I need you to guide my science team down there. But be careful. If the Vraken wanted it, it's dangerous." Lena nodded. "I'll take them." As she turned to leave the tent, she looked up at the sky. The Valkyrie hovered silently now, its howl gone, its weapons quiet. But its presence was louder than any sound. It wasn't just a ship. It was a promise kept. Inside the dome, Carla helped the child stand. "See that ship?" she whispered. "That's Earth, that's home." The girl smiled for the first time in weeks. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Ruiz watched the surface feed. His crew worked quietly around him, tending to damage reports and sensor logs. They'd won the battle, but he knew the war was just beginning. The Vraken didn't forget losses, and now they knew Earth was watching, but for tonight Kestra was safe, and that was enough. They thought no aid was coming. Then human warship arrived, howling from the void part. The silence after the battle was heavier than the noise had been. Smoke curled from wrecked Vraken ships scattered across the Kestra moon's surface. The red sky slowly faded to a deep violet as the gas giant below dipped below the horizon. Inside the dome, the survivors moved like ghosts, exhausted, relieved, but not yet ready to believe it was over. Earth soldiers in dark uniforms helped carry the wounded to field med tents. Others set up perimeter sensors and mounted turrets on the dome's outer ring. They worked fast, quiet and sure, like they'd done this 100 times before. Captain Ruiz stood just outside the main airlock, arms crossed, watching his people work. He hadn't slept since the jump. His uniform was wrinkled, his boots scuffed with alien dust, but his eyes were sharp. He turned as Lena Hayes approached, holding a datapad wrapped in a thermal sleeve. "They're ready to go down," she said. "Your science team," Ruiz nodded. "Lead the way." They walked through the dome's lower levels, past humming life support units and sealed storage bays. The air grew colder the deeper they went. At level 5, a heavy blast door stood closed, marked with a biohazard symbol that had been painted over in red. Lena tapped a code into the panel. The door hissed open, revealing a dark stairwell that spiraled down into rock. "This is it," she said. "The dig site." Ruiz motioned to 2 of his officers, Lieutenant Chen and Dr. Eris Thorne, the ship's xenotech specialist. They followed Lena down, boots echoing on metal steps. The chamber below was wide and low, lit by flickering emergency strips. In the center of the room, embedded in the stone floor, was a ring of smooth black crystals. They pulsed faintly like slow heartbeats, casting soft blue shadows on the walls. Dr. Thorne knelt, scanning the crystals with a handheld device. "This isn't natural," he murmured. "The energy signature matches nothing in our database. It's stable, but barely. One strong shockwave could trigger a cascade reaction." "What kind of reaction?" Ruiz asked. "Worst case? It destabilizes local gravity wells, could tear a planet apart. Or worse, a star? Ruiz went still. That's what the Vraken wanted. Not to study it, Thorne said grimly. To weaponize it. Back on the surface, Marcus Boone stood near the wreckage of a Vraken dropship, sifting through scorched data cores with a portable decoder. His brow furrowed as lines of alien script scrolled across his screen. He tapped his comm. Captain, you need to see this. Ruiz returned alone, leaving the science team to secure the chamber. Marcus handed him the decoder. On the screen was a star map, marked with dozens of red dots. Kestra was one of them, but others were near Earth-allied systems. Some were even close to Sol itself. They've been scouting for more sites like this, Marcus said. Kestra wasn't the target. It was just the first. Ruiz's jaw tightened. They're building a doomsday fleet. And if they get their hands on even one more of those crystals... Marcus didn't finish. He didn't need to. That night, Ruiz called a meeting in the outpost's mess hall. Earth officers stood along the walls. Kestra survivors sat at long tables wrapped in thermal blankets, sipping hot broth. Jake Morrow leaned against a support beam, arms crossed, listening. Lena sat near the front, her eyes on Ruiz. We have a choice, Ruiz said, his voice low but clear. We can take the crystal, destroy the site, and leave. That's the safe move. Command would approve it. But the Vraken will keep looking. They'll find another site. And next time, there might not be anyone close enough to stop them. He paused, looking at each face in the room. Or do we stay? We fortify Kestra, turn it into a listening post. Use the crystal signal to track Vraken movements. Warn others before it's too late. Murmurs spread through the room. Dr. Vance stood. You're talking about turning a civilian outpost into a military base. That's a death sentence if they come back in force. Maybe, Ruiz said. But if we run, we hand them the galaxy on a plate. Lena raised her hand. What if we study the crystal? Not to weaponize it, but to understand it. Maybe we can find a way to neutralize others like it. Dr. Thorne nodded. It's possible. But it'll take time. And protection. Jake spoke up then. I've got nowhere else to go. And I owe you my life. If you're staying, I'm staying. One by one, others agreed. Carla said she'd treat wounded soldiers as well as civilians. Owen offered to help repair Earth tech. Even Dr. Vance sighed and said, Fine, but I want full access to your medical bay. Ruiz looked at Marcus. What does command say? Marcus gave a dry smile. They haven't said anything. We're still off the books, remember? Then it's our call, Ruiz said. We stay. Work began at dawn. Earth engineers helped reinforce the dome with salvaged Vraken plating. Soldiers set up radar dishes and drone launchers on the highest ridges. Priya Nair and her team jury-rigged a power link between the Valkyrie's reactor and the outpost's grid, giving them enough juice to run shields and comms for months. Lena worked side by side with Dr. Thorne in the crystal chamber. They mapped its pulses, recorded its hum, and built a dampening field to keep it stable. She learned fast, asking questions, taking notes, her fear replaced by focus. Up on the bridge of the Valkyrie, Ruiz drafted a message. Not to command, not yet. He sent it on a tight beam frequency, coded, aimed at a relay near the Sol system. It read, We held the line. Recommend we keep it. He didn't know if anyone would listen, but someone had to start drawing lines again. That evening, Ruiz walked the perimeter alone. The stars were out now, cold, distant, but beautiful. He thought of Denver, of Rusty the dog, of all the places he'd failed to protect. But here, on this dead moon, he'd done something right. Behind him, the Valkyrie rested in silent orbit, its hull dark, its howl quiet. But ready. And below, in the heart of the rock, the crystal pulsed once, soft, steady, alive, like hope. They thought no aid was coming. Then human warship arrived. Howling from the void part 5 weeks passed on Kestra, and the outpost changed. What was once a dying relic of science and mining became something new, a watchtower on the edge of the unknown. Earth defense flags flew beside the old colonial banner. Solar panels from the Valkyrie's cargo bay stretched across the rocky flats, drinking in the weak light of the distant sun. Inside the dome, walls were patched with Vraken alloy. Corridors echoed with the boots of soldiers and civilians alike, and the air smelled of solder, stew, and fresh oxygen from the repaired recyclers. Lena Hayes no longer wore a torn jumpsuit. She wore a simple gray uniform with an Earth Science Corps patch on the shoulder. She spent her days in the crystal chamber, logging data, testing theories, and teaching Dr. Thorne the quirks of Kestra's geology. She had stopped thinking of the crystal as a weapon. To her, it was a key, a way to listen to the galaxy's hidden rhythms. And sometimes in the quiet hours it seemed to listen back. Jake Morrow stood guard at the East Ridge most mornings, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon. He wasn't militia anymore. He was squad leader of the new Kestra Defense Unit, a mix of Earth volunteers and locals trained by Sergeant Diaz. They drilled daily, practiced comms protocols, and ran emergency drills like they might actually matter. Because now they did. Captain Ruiz stayed aboard the Valkyrie most days, but he came down often. He walked the dome like a man checking on family. He ate in the mess hall, listened to complaints about ration bars, and once helped Carla Briggs fix a broken incubator for the med bay. He never gave orders like a conqueror. He asked, he listened. He led. One evening, as the gas giant rose again in the sky, casting long purple shadows, Ruiz gathered his senior staff and Kestra's core survivors in the command room. The mood was calm but serious. "We've intercepted Vraken chatter," Marcus said, standing by the main screen. "They're regrouping, not here, but near the Helios drift. That's only 2 jumps from Sol." A chill ran through the room. "They know we have the crystal," Priya added. "And they know we're watching," Ruiz nodded. "Which means we can't hide, but we can warn others." He turned to Lena. "Your work with the crystal's resonance, it can detect similar energy sources, right?" "Yes," she said. "If another site is active, even light years away, the pulse echoes. We just need time to calibrate." "Then we buy that time," Ruiz said. "We broadcast what we know." "Not to command. To every free port, every neutral station, every colony with a dish. Let them hear the truth. It was a risk. Spreading classified intel without approval could end Ruiz's career, or worse. But silence had cost too many lives already." The next day, Lena and Priya worked side by side, linking the crystal's signal to the Valkyrie's long-range array. They sent out a coded pulse, not a message but a beacon, a warning hum that only those who knew what to listen for would understand. Within hours, replies trickled in. A mining station near Proxima confirmed strange readings. A research buoy in the Orion Spur reported similar pulses. The network was waking up. On the surface, children played near the newly built comms tower. One of them, the girl Carla had cared for, pointed up at the sky where the Valkyrie hung like a silver star. "Is that the ship that saved us?" she asked. Carla smiled, kneeling beside her. "Yes, that's the ship that reminded the galaxy humans don't abandon their own." The girl tilted her head. "Will they stay?" Carla looked toward the ridge where Jake stood with his squad, and then up at the silent warship. "As long as we need them." Ruiz stood on his bridge that night, watching Kestra turn beneath him. The dome glowed softly, warm, alive. His crew moved quietly around him, tending to their duties. They were tired but proud. They'd done more than win a battle. They'd sparked something. He opened a secure channel and sent one final message to Earth Command. Not a report, not a request. Just 3 words: "We hold Kestra." He didn't wait for a reply. He didn't need one. Below in the crystal chamber, Lena placed her hand on the cool stone rim surrounding the artifact. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat syncing with her own. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Not to the crystal, to the ship, to the crew, to the idea that someone somewhere still cared enough to come howling out of the dark. Far above, the Valkyrie's engines hummed softly, not in anger, but in readiness. Its howl was gone, but its presence remained, a quiet promise written in steel and starlight. And in the void beyond, the stars watched, waiting to see what humanity would do next.